right, today's super hot topic is, who am I? Really? I mean, I really want to know, who am I? So let's dive right into the center of that fire and explore this incredible topic. So many men wake up in the middle of the night wondering, what's life really about? Who am I and why was I even born? But before we can really explore the answer to that question, it's important that we recognize that all of us have something that is called an identity. Your identity is the strongest force that you will ever have to overcome in your lifetime. What do I mean by that? I mean that we all have a personality, and then we have a soul. And the soul is the true essence of who you are. The soul is who God made you to be. The soul is beyond the mind, it's beyond the personality, it's beyond the different traits and characteristics that you may have. It's really who you are at the most innate level, beyond the mind's comprehension. Ultimately, we're all seeking to live into our true essence, our true soul. But all of us have to go through, or invited to go through, the surrendering of the identity. Maybe said differently, the surrendering of the ego. EGO, edging God out. See, all of us have an identity, and it is a force not to be reckoned with, and it will be the strongest force that you as a man will ever have to overcome. And I will give you two examples of exactly what I'm talking about so there's no confusion whatsoever. First, let me tell you about a woman that I took care of at a chiropractic office in Manhattan. This was roughly around 1996, maybe 1997. And this woman came into my office in a motorized wheelchair, and she had a little brown poodle in the front basket. And when she came to me, I asked her, how can I help you? Well, you come highly recommended. I hear that you work miracles. I would love it if you could help me walk again, because I have multiple sclerosis and I haven't been able to get out of this wheelchair for over 3 years. So I looked at her right in the eyes and I said, are you sure that you want to walk again? And she looked at me like I was a little crazy, like, why would you ask me a question like that? Of course, my whole life has been disrupted. I have multiple sclerosis. I'm bound to this wheelchair. Of course I want to walk again. So what ends up happening? Within a few months of care, where she was coming in consistently, she was able to, for the first time in over 3 years, start to walk again. I'm not taking credit. I know that I let God work through me, so please don't think that, oh my God, I gotta go see this guy. He's a miracle worker, he's a healer, he can do it, he can fix me. First of all, none of you are broken. But the point that I'm illustrating here is that she was able to walk again. And what ended up happening next is in relationship to identity. She walked out of my office, never to return. And I would text her, I would email her, I would call her. Where is she? Why has she disappeared? And wouldn't you know, maybe 6 months to a year later, I ran into her in the streets of Manhattan. And where did I see her? In her motorized wheelchair with her little brown dog in the front basket. And the question beckons, why? Why would somebody do that? She had the opportunity to put down the wheelchair. She had the opportunity to walk again. She had the opportunity to live her life without any constraints. Why did she go back to the wheelchair? And the answer is identity. She wasn't sure that if she were to give up the wheelchair, that she was enough. She wasn't sure that she'd feel worthy enough. She wasn't sure that she'd feel good enough. She wasn't sure that people would stop to talk to her. She wasn't sure that she was important enough, significant enough, that people would connect with her. You see, she got a lot out of that wheelchair. She got a lot out of that wheelchair. She had people stopping in the streets and schmoozing with her, talking with her, laughing with her, and she was terrified. And I'm not saying that this was conscious, but she was terrified to give up that wheelchair. She was terrified to put it down, because then she had to risk, will people still like me? Will people still talk to me? Will people still want to be in a relationship with me? So part of her identity was the wheelchair. That's example number one. Let's go on to example number two on what I mean by identity. And this is one of my favorite stories ever. There was a gentleman who was referred to me, and it turns out that a week or two prior to coming to me, he had tried to take his life. His idea was to go into a bathtub and to slit his wrists and ultimately to end his life. And by the grace and mercy of God, thank God he failed. And so here he is at our event, and we're wondering, why would this guy do this? He's like such a charmer, he's such a nice guy. And he starts telling us his story, and he says that he ended up marrying his high school sweetheart. He has 3 incredible daughters that are beautiful, they're smart, they're intelligent. He has a church where everyone loves him. He has a company where he's ridiculously successful. He's a multimillionaire. He has a house, a winter house, a summer house, you name it, any new fancy car that ever comes out or any watch that comes out, he owns it. Everyone loves him. Everyone thinks he has integrity. Everyone thinks he has incredible morals and values, and everyone thinks that you should be committed and live your life the way that he does. In fact, even his brother-in-law's wife said, why can't you be more like him? So everyone wanted to be like this guy. So the question is, why in God's name would he have wanted to take his life? And this is the story of identity. Because what ended up happening was that he had had roughly 19 affairs behind his wife's back, and he got caught in the last one. And he even thought that he was in love with the woman that he was in an affair with, which was his 19th affair partner. And now that she knew, the kids were going to know, the church was going to know, everyone at the job was going to know, and his identity was up for renegotiation. What do I mean by that? Well, everyone saw him as a man of integrity. Everyone saw him as a man of honor. Everyone saw him as a committed man. Everyone saw him as a church-going man with these morals and values and principles and ethics. Now, all of a sudden, he would have to face all of these people and face the possibility that they will see him differently, face the possibility that they will see him as a fake, a fraud, a phony, a liar, a monster. And for so many of us, we all go through something very similar. We are terrified to show our darkness. We are terrified to show our shadow. We are terrified to show the parts of us that are not what we've been trying to sell to the world. See, every single one of us has this identity. Your identity is how you would like other people to see you. Now, the irony is it's really who the real you is. However, you have these other parts that are the opposite of what you're trying to sell to the world. And we will go to great lengths to preserve and protect and defend that identity. And for some, they will go so far as to consider, if not having already taken their own life. And I say that with immense sadness, because our lives matter. You matter. You're an amazing human being. You're an amazing person. So I have an enormous amount of compassion, enormous amount of empathy. I know the incredible load, the incredible weight that a man carries on his shoulders to be this parent, to be this provider, to be able to protect, and then let alone where is the leftover time to just feed myself, our personal time. It's an enormity of stress and pressure on a man today to provide in such an extraordinary way. And it could be so burdensome. It could feel like the weight of the world. It could feel like a 10,000-pound gorilla, and all of a sudden you are being perceived differently than what you have sold to people. Then your identity is up for negotiation. And your identity is who you're seeing in the mirror almost never parallels who you want other people to see you as. See, most men that I've worked with, and I've had the luxury and privilege with working with well over 10,000 men over the past 10 plus years. And when I ask them, it's really sad to hear, hey, who do you see when you look in the mirror? Most men will say, I see a fraud. I see a fake. I see a phony. I see a con artist. I see a liar. I see a beaten down man. I see somebody that's unworthy. I see somebody that's unlovable. In fact, if you ask a man to say into the mirror, I love you, it's so challenging for a man to do that. Why? Because we all have a shadow. We'll have parts of us that we're not proud of. And see, the identity is, no, we're trying to sell to the world. I'm not that, I'm this. I'm not a liar. I'm a truth teller. I don't lack integrity. I have integrity. I don't lack commitment. I come from commitment. I don't lack morals and ethics and values. I have all of those things. So your identity is what you've been trying to sell to the world, but when you look in the mirror, you have a tendency to see the opposite, so there's a disconnect there. Now, in the case of this gentleman that I was speaking to, there's a few things that I want to share with you about him before you go and judge another human being. And that's something that's so beautiful about the Man on Fire Brotherhood, is that we have fostered a community of non-judgment. We trade all that in for an enormous amount of empathy, compassion, and love for our fellow brothers, for our fellow man. If you haven't walked a day in another person's shoes, you have absolutely no right to judge that human being. You have no idea what they've been through. You have no idea what type of karmic patterns they brought in. You have no idea what type of lineage patterns they brought in. You have no idea what type of shadow they have to overcome in this lifetime. You don't know the soul lessons that are meant for them. So we always encourage men not to judge others, and not to mention we're always working with men to raise their frequency, raise their vibration so they can get to a true place of non-judgment. So it's not just a mental concept, hey, don't judge your neighbor. This is from the inside out, where you really grow to a certain vibration where it's impossible for you to judge another person. You just have love for them. So what you wouldn't know about this particular individual is that when he was younger, he was repeatedly molested by his grandfather. And how that obviously played out later in life is that he used women as a vehicle, as a vessel, to try to get himself out of pain, to try to feel like he's finally enough, to try to feel that he's worthy, to try to feel like he's lovable. Now, am I supporting that behavior? Absolutely not. But we all have vices. We all have forms of pain management. You know, some of us might just turn to weed, or we turn to alcohol. Maybe we have pills. Maybe you have antidepressants. Maybe you overwork. Maybe you go to strip clubs. Maybe you turn to pornography, massage parlors, things of this nature. We all have different vices and different forms of pain management of how we're going to try to get out of our own pain. And in his particular case, again, you can't judge another human being if you haven't walked a day in their shoes. So from the fact that he was repeatedly molested as a little boy, how that played out later in life, he didn't really know what true love was. And it was hard for him to fully surrender into his marriage and be able to live a life of integrity until he found his way to Man on Fire. And what ended up happening in his year-long journey with us is he truly got to a place of self-acceptance and self-love. He accepted the things that happened in the past, and he was able to do the internal work and do the healing through the different tools and processes that we offer, to the point where he could look in the mirror and truly say, I love you. And another great part about that story, well, first of all, they're still married, very happily married, and the whole family has accepted him, because people that rejected him, it really had nothing to do with him. It had to do with their inability or lack of safety to fully look in the mirror and really be honest and take inventory of, well, what about myself have I not accepted? What about myself am I not proud of? It's so much easier to judge another human being than it actually is to look in the mirror and just judge yourself and be honest with yourself. So the great part about this story is that his wife, she never lost her sovereignty. And what do I mean by that? She knew who her husband was deep down. She knew his real identity is a beautiful man, a man of character, a man of value and virtue, a man of honor and integrity, a committed man, a man that walks with integrity. She knew that that's who he really was, and everything else was an illusion. Everything else was a mirage. Everything else was just a shadow covering up the real person, the real version of who he was. And so she never lost her sovereignty. She kept holding a space of love. Does that mean that she would tolerate and allow and not have a healthy boundary in her marriage? No. But while everyone else cast him out, while everyone else judged him, while everyone else wanted to throw rocks and say, how could he do this, and what a bad person, rather than look in the mirror for themselves, she didn't lose sight of who he was. She kept praying to God, and she kept praying that he would find his way back to his light. So she maintained her light. She maintained her sovereignty. She's a rare breed. She's a rare case, and I wish that other women could really learn from this story, but I don't know the uniqueness of your situation, so please know I'm not judging your situation. I'm simply saying, in the selfish world of wishing, I wish that other women could really truly learn from this story. The way that you help a person is to come into your own light and shine it so powerfully that you bring other people back to their own light. And so this was a beautiful example of how she never lost sight of who he was. And as I shared today, they're so happily married. They're madly in love. It turns out he was never in love with this other person because he really didn't even know who he was yet. He was so busy protecting this identity, so invested in wanting to be seen a certain way. And this is where the healing begins for all of us as men. Is will we have the courage to own all of our parts? Can we recognize that, yeah, while parts of me that I want people to think that I'm a truth teller and I operate from integrity and honor and commitment, would you be willing to look at the parts of you that are opposite? And as I shared earlier, this literally can get a man to a point where he wants to take his own life. So in the woman's case with the wheelchair, she wasn't willing to give up the wheelchair because her identity was the woman in the wheelchair. Her identity was the terror that if I put down the wheelchair, will people like me just for who I am? Will they like me if they don't feel sorry for me? Will I still feel important and unique and significant? And so this is the force that we're all up against, which is this identity. And so the question that I have for you is, what's the wheelchair that you have in your life? Right? It could be a metaphor. It doesn't have to be literal. And in this woman's case, it was literal. But what's the wheelchair that you've been refusing to put down? What's the identity that you've been invested in protecting? And how different would your life look if you were able to put that down? That is my question for you, brother, because the real identity of who you are, in case you missed my last episode, is you are enough. You are incredible. You are worthy. You are lovable. You are extraordinary, and you are phenomenal. That is who you are. You're a loving man. You're a loving son. You're a loving husband. You're a loving friend. This is who you are, and everything else is a story. Yes, many of us have done things we're not proud of. Many of us have done bad things. Good people do bad things, but that does not define who you are as a man. So your true identity of what you've been trying to sell to others, that's probably who you are. The problem is you're going to have a very challenging time living into that until you embrace the parts of you that have been hiding, the parts of you that you've been hiding from others, out of the fear that if I show them this, if I show them the ugly, if I show them the monster, they'll withdraw their love. And some people may. Sadly, some people may. But at some point, we got to be willing to put down the wheelchair. At some point, we got to be willing to face our identity. We got to start telling the truth and own all of our parts. All right, guys, it's with so much love. It is the creator of Man on Fire signing off. I'll see you next time inside the center of the fire. If you like what you're seeing and hearing, then hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you'll know the next episode has dropped.